Okay. So, I have some very interesting things about Passover that even I didn't know yet again, so I want to share them with you. Give me half a second to switch my screen.
Good morning, Lorraine.
Good morning. How are you?
Lorraine, which synagogue do you belong to?
Har Shalom?
Do you go to these sisterhood events there? Because I don't think I've seen you.
I used to.
You should
I'm
try
not
it
as-
again. They have new leadership and they do some excellent programming.
Okay.
I mean,
maybe
I
I'll
was
look-
there, I think twice last week.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Can I put you in touch with the current president?
You know what? I can do that myself, but I appreciate that. Thank
Beth
you.
Ann Katz.
Okay. I mean,
Okay.
I get the newsletters. I know the names, so yes.
Okay, so what I've put up on my screen, I know it's very bright, but it doesn't bother you guys, I hope. Whatever, you can
No.
control your brightness. It's very bright on my screen.
No.
Is Oz Yashir, the song, so the Song of the Sea. So on this, so several weeks ago was Shabbat Shirah, and this is when they read the Song of the Sea. Miriam leads everyone, right? They've crossed over and they sing this song, and it has actually a very specific melody, but we're not going to go into that because this is not a music class and I'm not competent to teach that. But nevertheless, what surprised me was this is literally, you see how it's, I'm going to see if I can, that's as big as this. Oh, maybe it's, oh, here we can see. In the Torah,
Yeah, it's spaced out.
this is how it's spaced out, exactly. And so I wanted to share that with you, and I don't recall knowing that. And on the 7th day of Pesach is believed to be when they passed over through the Red Sea. Okay, so, and this, the contents of this song are actually contained in our Shacharit service as part of Pesukei de Zimra, I believe. And so does anyone happen to have like a Siddur Sim Shalom handy? You don't have to, it's not a big
I can
deal.
get one.
No, it's fine. You don't need to go and get it. So it's on page 93 of your weekday services. It's such an important concept, right? The redemption is such an important concept that we say it every morning.
Yeah,
So
we do.
yeah, exactly. You do. So, and it's Exodus chapter 15, verses 1 through 18 or 19. In my book, it says 1 through 18. So,
And this Sim Shalom is on page 27.
okay, but Edith, keep it open if you would, okay? So I don't have, yeah, so this is the online Siddur Sim Shalom. So this page, it says page 27, mine is on page 93. It depends on which volume.
Oh, okay.
Depends on which volume you have. This, oh, here it is. I was worried that, okay, so let's look at the translation, okay? Does somebody want to read? Is anybody interested in reading to me, or I can read to you?
Okay.
Sure. Go ahead. Marjorie, go ahead.
I thought Marlene was going to read.
Oh, Marlene can read. Whoever wants, I'm happy to have
I
one.
thought Edith was going to read.
We can share, Edith.
Go ahead. Your hand was up. Go ahead.
Starting with then Moses.
Yeah, so this is the translation right out of the Siddur Sim Shalom. This is what I'm looking at in my book. So yeah, read a couple stanzas, then Edith can read, Marjorie can read. Just let's
Okay.
understand the English before we go on to how we're going to jump into it a little deeper.
Then Moses and the people Israel.
Ignore the typos.
Dang. I just want to see if my English was okay and my glasses are working.
Yeah.
This song to Adonai. We haven't been drinking cups of wine yet.
Yes, this should be a G.
I got
Sorry.
it. But sand in the desert, it all made sense. I will sing to Adonai, mighty in majestic triumph. Horse and driver, God has hurled into the sea. Adonai is my strength and my might. God is my deliverance. This is my God to whom I give glory, my ancestors' God, whom I exalt. Adonai is a warrior. Adonai is God's name. Pharaoh's chariot and army God has cast into the sea. Pharaoh's choicest captains have drowned in the sea of reeds. The depths covered them. They sank in the deep like a stone. Your right hand, Adonai, singular in strength. Your right hand, Adonai, shatters the enemy. With your majestic might, you crush your foes. You let loose your fury to consume them like straw. In the rush of your rage, the waters were raised. In the sea stood motionless, the great deep congealed.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to scroll up so someone else can see more. Marjorie, you want to read?
The enemy said, I will pursue and ponder.
I think
I will
that's
do-
plunder. That
Plunder,
should be
yeah.
plunder.
What do you think it is?
It's plunder in my book.
It's
Okay.
PL.
I will pursue and plunder. Makes more sense. I will devour them. I will draw my sword. With my bare hands, I will dispatch them. You loosed the wind. The sea covered them like lead. They sank in the welling, I'm sure, waters.
Should be swelling waters. but
Swelling
it's
waters? Okay.
Swelling. Yeah, there's
Swelling
a lot
waters.
of typos.
Oh, that
Who
has so many
is-
typos.
Who is like you, Adonai, among all that is worshipped? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders?
Okay, stop right there for a second. So those of us who are more familiar would know that this is Micha Mocha Ba'elim Adonai, Micha Mocha Nedar Bakodesh, right?
Mhm.
No Tehila Ose Fela. That's the Hebrew for this. Okay, keep going.
You stretched out your hand, the earth swallowed them. In your love, you lead the people you redeemed. With your strength, you guide them to your holy habitation. Nations take note and tremble. Panic grips the dwellers of Philistia. Odam's chieftains are chilled with terror. Trembling seizes the mighty of Moab. The citizens of Canaan are confused. Dread and dismay descend upon them. Your overwhelming power makes them still as stone, while your people, Adonai, the people whose, I'm sure, whom you have redeemed, pass peacefully over.
Edith, do you have the book open? I have
Yes. Yes.
another
there's-
sentence or two. Will you read that last bit?
Yes, lead them to your lofty mountain. Let them lodge there in your abode, the sanctuary, Adonai, that you have established. Adonai shall reign throughout all time. And it repeats, Adonai shall reign throughout all time.
Perfect. Okay, so now we are going to, let me just make sure. Aha, here we go. So this is a lovely article about this. The Song and the Miracle at the Sea. Okay, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger.
Please.
Okay, I don't know if I can make this go away. Hold on. I can. Get rid of that. Okay, so this is a professor of rabbinics who wrote this. The rabbinic reconstruction of the chronology of the events of the Exodus, succinctly summarized by Rashi in his commentary on Exodus chapter 14, verse 5. So we're familiar with Rashi's commentary, right, in our Chumash, right? Okay. So he says it places the miraculous rescue of the fleeing Israelites at the Red Sea on the seventh day of their escape. According to this traditional view, the pursuing Egyptians met their final demise during the night, after which at daybreak, Moses and Miriam led the Israelites in the hymn known as Shirat Hayam. So that's what we just read the English of, okay? The Song at the Sea. As day 7 of the Exodus corresponds with the 7th day of the Pesach festival, the rabbis prescribed the biblical account of these events, including the hymn itself, as the Torah reading for the 7th day of Pesach. Okay. But what does this hymn actually celebrate? So he digs deep. He actually is a scholar also of rabbinic Hebrew, or excuse me, of biblical Hebrew, which is very important in interpreting the meaning, okay? Because we know today's Hebrew is not the same as biblical Hebrew. So, but what does this hymn actually celebrate? The first verse makes explicit reference to the miraculous destruction of Pharaoh at the sea. Okay, I will sing to Adonai, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. We find this the same in verses 4, 5, 8, 10, and 12, the last 4 employing striking imagery. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has cast into the sea, and the pick of his officers drowned in the sea of reeds. Yeah, that's essentially the exact translation I have here in Sim Shalom, okay? The deeps covered them. They went down into the depths like a stone. Hold on one second. I hear my mouse is just not as, I'm going to use this instead. Okay. At the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The floods stood straight like a wall. The deeps froze in the heart of the sea. You exhaled. The sea covered them. They sank like lead in the majestic waters. You put out your right hand. The earth swallowed them. Okay, so here he's getting into, and for his purposes, the Hebrew is very important over here, but I'm not going to go into the Hebrew. It's very small and won't be as meaningful for us. Okay, but similarly, he says, verse 9 alludes explicitly to Pharaoh's bloodthirsty pursuit. Clearly, the more generalized adulation of God as a warrior, in verse 3, who smashed his adversary to bits with his mighty right hand, devouring them with his hot breath as a fire burns straw, verses 6 and 7, altogether unsurpassed by any other deities in his awe-inspiring extraordinary deeds, verse 11, taken in context, also refer to the triumphant victory at the sea. Okay, however, after recalling the final descent of the Egyptians into the bowels of the earth, the song leaves behind the miracle at the sea, never to return to it. Instead, it moves on to subsequent events. First, the song praises God for leading his people to the land of Canaan. So in verse 13, in your love, you did then lead the people you redeemed. In your might, you did guide them to your holy abode. The hymn alludes here to God's providential care for Israel throughout the journey from Egypt to Canaan. It dwells at considerable length on the terror that struck the other nations when they heard of the horrible fate suffered by the Egyptians. When the people heard, they trembled. Dread gripped the dwellers of Philistia. Next, the clans of Edom became dismayed. The tribes of Moab, trembling, gripped them. All the dwellers of Canaan became liquefied. Terror and dread descended upon them. Through the might of your arm, they became as still as stone, until your people, O Adonai, had passed through, until the people that you redeemed had passed through. According to the idolized account poetically portrayed here, upon hearing upon the Exodus, the Philistines, Edomites, Moabites, and several peoples of Canaan were so paralyzed by their dread of the Israelites' mighty God that they did not dare to wage war against him or them. Instead, they froze in place and put up no resistance, thereby ensuring Israel's safe journey and unmolested passage through their own lands on its way to its destination. After praising God for not merely bringing his people to his own domain, but actually planting them there, that is, settling them permanently there to remain and thrive, the hymn finally reaches its climax. In its final lines, the song extols God for successfully bringing his plan to its conclusion, the building of the divine abode, the temple which, in the poetic imagination, he created with his very own hands. So verse 17, you brought them and planted them in your own mountain, the place you made to dwell in, O Adonai, the sanctuary, O Lord, which your hands established. Having completed its account of the people of Israel's transformation from imperiled fugitive slaves to the permanent inhabitants of God's own holy mountain, the poem concludes with the earnest prayer, may Adonai be king for all eternity. Adonai yimalech leolam va'ed. So here, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed, which of course we are used to saying. Okay. So he goes on, the song of the sea or the song of the temple is the question he now asks. The historical horizon of the hymn, the dramatic period in Israel's history that this sublime song celebrates, thus extends well beyond the time of the Exodus and the deliverance at the sea. The song indeed begins with the miraculous, terrifying annihilation of Egypt's elite forces, devoting to it a full 12 verses. But it then goes on to recount subsequent events. It telescopes the journey through the wilderness, focusing on Israel's unimpeded progress to and conquest of the land of Canaan, and it climaxes in the building of the temple on God's holy mountain. The victory at the sea is therefore the song's starting point, but it is not its object. The song is not a hymn of thanksgiving offered at the moment of Israel's salvation at the sea, but rather a celebration of God's providential chesed from that time until the present day. The present day obviously cannot be earlier than the latest event mentioned, the establishment of God's temple on his holy mountain in Canaan, centuries after the time of Moses. The hymn thus celebrates God's enthronement in his permanent abode, his temple in Jerusalem, which for the poet is the climax and goal of Israel's election and redemption, the most wondrous stages of which are described in retrospect. So then he goes into an explanation of the grammar and how he gets to the point that they can't be future events that are being discussed, okay? And I don't want to go into all of that. So evasive interpretations and integrity in exegesis. Linguistically, there is no justification for reading the song as if it celebrated the miracle at the sea as an event that had just taken place and looked forward to Israel's future. The recent event that the song celebrates is the building of the temple, presented as the culmination of a process of uninterrupted divine providence that began with the Exodus. Of course, translators and commentators who have concealed this have not done so because of any deficiency in their command of biblical Hebrew. Rather, the notion that the Torah might contain passages that refer explicitly to events well after the time of Moses, as though they belonged to the distant past, was simply unthinkable. The implication that portions of the Torah did not even exist in Moses' time and could not have been written by him was unimaginable. And so it fell to critical scholars to realize that the author of this portion of the Torah's narrative evidently embedded in his account of the events surrounding the Exodus a poem, most likely not of his own creation, originally designed for a different purpose entirely, to mark the completion of God's earthly dwelling place, the Jerusalem temple. As this temple psalm began by recalling the miraculous rescue at the sea, this author, most source could identify him as J, put it to new use, placing it in the mouths of Moses, Miriam, and the Israelites at the time of the Exodus. All right, I messed that sentence up, but as this temple psalm began by recalling the miraculous rescue at the sea, this author put it to new use, placing it in the mouths of Moses, Miriam, and the Israelites at the time of the Exodus. Critical scholars have taken their cue on this and similar matters from Abraham ibn Ezra, who in the 12th century laid down two ironclad rules about validity in interpretation. The first rule, that no interpretation that fails to meet the rigorous demands of Hebrew grammar is admissible. And the second rule, that no author, not even a prophet, indeed not even God, speaks or writes in the past tense of events that have not yet taken place. So Ibn Ezra thus admitted that certain passages in the Torah date from and pertain to time periods long after the lifetime of Moses, and therefore could not have been written by him, even at God's own bidding. And while Ibn Ezra did not include the Song of the Sea among the passages he so identified, it is through our own unfailing adherence to the principles of intellectual integrity on which he insisted that we are able to gain a new appreciation of Shirat Hayam, both in its original role and its eventual incorporation within the Torah narrative. So I found this really interesting. I hope I didn't go through it too fast. But what that leads us to is a piece in on the JTS website. So this is from 1994. One of their scholars, professor of Jewish history and chancellor emeritus, Ismar Schorsch, wrote about this very same thing. Oh, I'm sorry. Now I can't. Okay, here we go. Okay, so he's writing about the Song of the Sea, but Shabbat Shirah as a parsha. Unlike most Sabbaths of the year, this week's bears a special name. It is called Shabbat Shirah, the Sabbath of Song, from the Song at the Sea, which is recited in its own cantillation in this week's parsha. So a specimen of archaic biblical poetry, the song recounts the gusto, the deliverance of Israel, trapped between the Sea of Reeds and the Egyptian army by yet another divine miracle. And thus, in the middle of winter each year, the offspring of ancient Israel break forth in joyous song as if the redemption had just occurred. Okay, but this is more, here we go. The crossing of the sea comes as a dramatic postscript to the Exodus. The Torah could have chosen, after all, to end its story of the Egyptian sojourn with Israel's departure. But Pharaoh's final change of heart brings about the ultimate and irreversible triumph of God. Pharaoh himself, the son of the sun god Re, goes down with his troops. God has moved from smiting the firstborn of Egypt to the firstborn of Re. Israel, God's own firstborn, survives unscathed. This is a very interesting parallelism concept, right? That I certainly didn't put these pieces together. Moreover, the story ends where it started, at a body of water. The drowning of Egypt's army rings with poetic justice. At the outset, the Egyptians had sought to annihilate Israel by drowning its male children. Now God destroys the symbol of their power and manhood by the very same means. At stake in this marvelous account of redemption is not only the supreme value of human freedom, but also the repudiation of an abhorrent religious civilization. Torah's narrative rejects a body politic that reveres its ruler as God incarnate and rests on a system of slavery, a calendar based solely on the sun, and a religion fixated on death and the afterlife. The exodus of Israel from Egypt reflects a radical break with the values and institution of the ancient Near East. Often overlooked in this regard is what the Torah does to the nature festivals of its surrounding cultures. These moments of communal celebration at harvest time are transformed so that they are now associated with critical events in the history of Israel. Judaism replaces nature with history as its basic category of religious experience. Passover commemorates the national renewal of Israel after a fallow period of bondage, rather than the renewal of nature after winter. Sukkot preserves the memory of Israel's dependence on God's mercy in the wilderness, and Shavuot, the revelation at Sinai. To be sure, these festivals retain an agricultural substratum, but their primary meaning is thoroughly historicized. Even Shabbat, unknown in pagan antiquity and unrelated to any cycle in nature, is justified historically as recalling the creation of the world. The consequences of this shift from nature to history reinforce the idea of ethical monotheism. Judaism develops a linear concept of time as opposed to a cyclical one and sanctifies events rather than places. The mountain of Sinai is not holy or even known, but the moment of revelation is. The Torah intentionally conceals from us the place where Moses is buried. Time is a medium less susceptible to idolatry or polytheism, in which God's presence is made manifest audibly rather than visually. Time becomes for Judaism the realm in which humanity and God join to complete together the work of creation. The rite of circumcision symbolizes the state of incompleteness of the natural world. The triumph of morality will eventually render nature perfect, bringing history to its messianic conclusion. These are large and complicated thoughts brought to mind not only in this particular Shabbat, but daily as we recite the Song of the Sea in our morning prayers. Above all, the rabbis saw fit to include it because this vigorous poem celebrates a powerful instance of God's intervention in history. The crossing of the Sea of Reeds became emblematic of God's undiluted concern, accessibility, and compassion. The past entails assurance for the future. Ehyeh asher ehyeh, indeed, the God of history forever engaged in the fate of Israel and everlasting presence. In the darkness of Theresienstadt, so that was obviously the death camp, right, by the Nazis, Leo Beck penned a defiant confession of faith published in 1955 as This People Israel. When he came to the Song at the Sea, his spirit soared above the muck of the moment. Israel knew that beyond history and revealing itself within, there dwells the great patience. World history has become patient justice. Revenge is reserved for God. The people remained faithful to this song and to this belief, and with it, history itself became a song. History was not only an apprehension and a narration of that which had happened here, nor was it only a possession of these who pursued this knowledge and power. It lived within the people as its certainty. History was interwoven with that day which came and which was to come. This people is in fact a singing people. Every day desires its song, even the darkest must have it. A song of such power is worth a closer look. Structurally, it is divided into 4 sections. Archaic does not mean chaotic. Passage from one section to another is marked by the repetition of a phrase, your right hand, O Lord, in verse 6. Who is like you, O Lord, in verse 11, till your people cross over in verse 16. In terms of content, this Thanksgiving hymn provides a sweep of Israelite history in chronological order. The introduction affirms the experience of God at the sea as a warrior. The second section recounts the failure of the Egyptians to cross the sea, while the third refers obliquely to the revelation at Sinai and the panic of the nations at the wondrous deeds of Israel's God, who shepherds Israel through the wilderness. The final section ends triumphantly with Israel ensconced on God's holy mountain in a sanctuary built by God. This is a drama, but with a single actor, bespeaking an overwhelming sense of God's active, steadfast presence. God orchestrated the emergence of Israel as a nation to form an alternative social order, but history proved to be recalcitrant, and exile became the locus of Jewish life. Accordingly, when the rabbis integrated the Song at the Sea into the prayer book, they doubled verse 18 as if it were another transition and added 3 messianic verses from elsewhere in Scripture, holding out the promise of eventual redemption. Such muted messianism fortified and frustrated Jews as they endured the imperfections of their historical experience. So big concepts here, obviously. But, you know, the seventh day we crossed over, right? We started our nationhood, and also the piece I didn't integrate into all of this, and there is a lot out there on this, that Miriam leads the people in this song. So that another very important event, that a woman is named in the Torah to have done such a thing, right? And it's so important that it's in Shachrit service every morning. Thoughts, comments, anything? All right, I blew you all away. Okay, good.
It's not, I mean, it's a lot to digest, but I like the way it sorted it out, and you know, with putting certain things, certain concepts in order, so that when you're doing it, it kind of makes more sense.
That's how I felt. I mean, you know, I take it for granted, I guess. You know, I've always just known that it happened, and I don't think I never analyzed the song itself, the poem itself.
Probably
So
not.
yeah. And while I've been at services when it's been done, I don't think anyone has analyzed it for me, right? It's when they at Shul on that day, they tell you, they put it in context, but they don't delve in and analyze it. So I found this very interesting. And I will just, as you perhaps know from all the things I've been sharing recently, the Jewish Theological website has just masses of information on the holidays, on the Torah, right? And so this is under community learning, Torah online. And so I found all of this by searching different things within that part of their website. So I searched Shirat Hayam, so Song at the Sea, or Az Yashir. I searched different ways. So for instance, the article that I was reading from Professor Schwartz, The Song at the Sea, What Does It Celebrate? Excuse me a second. I got to that by searching, I think, Az Yashir, and that kind of really put together a lot of other things that I had already read. So, and I also found there are, in the JTS website, there's the trope for actually singing it properly. And there's also a short recording of a cantorial class singing the first part of it. But I didn't think that would be as helpful to us as understanding it. So yes, please, Marlene, go ahead.
I'm glad you shared the wealth of information and history and commentary from the JTS website, because whenever I've had the honor, the responsibility and privilege of creating a Devar Torah, I've always, read the Parsha several times, or obviously the triennial section, and then I go in and I try to think what I'm doing, and I have a couple of ideas, and that's where I've gone just to see. And I usually look for the women first, but the men have had some great commentary as well. But speaking of women, I think it's really important that every time there's a woman who's, discussed and mentioned, included in a Parsha, that we should be aware of it and share it and learn from it. It's not in every Parsha. It's not always in a favorable position of strength or leadership. So That's my commentary for this morning.
Well, and as we talked about previously, in the Passover story, there are women who are extremely important to the events that occur. So, and for me, it's interesting that when it was only in the last handful of years, I think less than 10 years, that I even knew the name Shifra and Pua. That was not in any of the Haggadot that I remember reading. But now it's big stuff, and as we've come forward and we've added Miriam's cup to our Seder tables, and there's a reading that goes along with that. And then, some Haggadot include the passages talking about Shifra and Pua, not just that, Pharaoh commanded that they should drown the babies or kill the babies at birth. We get into the more detailed part where they mention the women. Yes, I agree with you completely. There is a professor in Israel, whose name escapes me at the moment, who she has a lecture that she does. I think she calls it Sacred Feminism. And I'm not sure if it was part of the Women's Days of Study already, or it's coming up. I just don't remember precisely, but the topic is basically how the names of women were kind of omitted from the study, right? And from they were just not, they were passed over, right? They just nobody made any much about them. And that was, I assume, it happened for a very long time, and we're coming out of it now, right? And certainly I think now women make up about 50% of the class of rabbis and cantors at the American seminaries. So we've come a long way. All right, so let's go back now to I just have to find, here we go. Before I share my screen, it's good to get on the page I want to show you. Okay, so now we're back to Hebrew and what you'll be doing in the Haggadah, right? So this is Kiddush. And this is a beautiful PowerPoint shared with me by Debbie Lempert. Thank you so much, Cincinnati again. And this is Kiddush for not Friday night, but just a weekday night of Pesach. I've decided not to bother you with the Friday night Kiddush, the added on part, because Pesach doesn't start on Shabbat this year and doesn't include Shabbat. So we have a slightly shorter one. Okay, so let's read. Is it big enough for you guys to see, or do you want me?
Not for me.
Not quite.
Okay, can I make it bigger? Come on. It's only a little bigger. I'm afraid if I go like this, it's too big. It is.
Yes, it takes it off the page.
Right, so let me see if I can go bit by bit. Hold on, let's see. How do I get rid of this side part is the problem. I never remember in this. Oh, wait, maybe if I go like this. There we go. All right, it's still a smidgen too big, but let's see.
Go sideways? Not quite.
I don't know if I can make it a
We're
smidgen.
missing the far left and the far right.
I know, I'm trying. How's that? Can you see it now? It's still a smidge too big. There, how's that?
Good.
Okay, let's see if I
Better.
can center it. That's pretty darn good. Okay. Marcia, will you read for us?
Okay. Savri Maranan Barabanan Barabotai.
Perfect. Keep going.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Perfect. Okay. Lorraine, will you continue?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikal Am Baromanu
Romamanu.
Baromanu
There you go.
Mikal Lashon Viki Shanu Bemit Otav. Keep going.
Sure.
Vatiken Lanu Adonai Eloheinu Bahava Moadim L'Simcha Hagim Uzmanim L'Sashon
With Sason, you were right the first time. It's to sin.
Okay, the second, that's interesting. The second, I guess the second shin doesn't have the.
You're right, it does not, but it's the dot over here that is the dot for the sin, actually.
Okay,
So it actually doesn't need this vav, but they've given us this vav.
I see. Okay, L'Sashon.
You want to stop? Why don't you, I know you're doing beautifully, but stop so I can ask another to read. Perfect. Okay. Edith, will you continue?
I'm not sure where we are.
Well,
I
right
can't see
here-
the cursor.
It says
Oh,
et.
okay. At Yom Hag. Is that hay or
Yes,
is that
hay. It's a hay.
Okay. Well, the opening is not as big as with the next word. Hamadzot,
Yep.
Hazeh,
Mhm.
Zaman, Kerutenu,
Perfect.
Mikra, Kadesh,
Kodesh. Yeah. Kodesh.
Kadesh, Zecher,
Zecher. Cher.
Ker, Liziat, Liziat,
Litziat. Yep.
Mitzrayim.
Perfect. You can stop if you like. You can go on if you like, but you can stop.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Marlene, will you continue? We have to unmute.
Is that the largest you can make it? Because I'm leaning over and squinting.
I can make it larger, but then I'm gonna have to move my screen as you read.
Okay,
But it won't stay larger. Sorry. It's like
okay.
Okay. You don't have to read if you don't want.
Okay, no, I'll try. I need to practice. Kivanu. Now I'm squinting. Vaharach.
Vaharta.
Oh, I missed a tach. Vahartach.
Let me see if I can get it larger. There.
There,
How's that?
better. Kivanu, that's better. Vaharta.
Okay, now I'm gonna go.
And then
over
we
here.
swing over here.
Yeah, here we are.
Okay. Viotanu.
Yeah, Otanu.
Viotanu. Kidashta.
Kidashta. You got it.
Oh my God. Michol Ha'amim. Umo Adai.
Day. Good.
Day. Okay. Umo Day. Kadoshcha.
Kad Shecha.
Oh, Kad Shecha. Kad, there's a syllable. Shecha. Kad Shecha.
Let me see if I can make it bigger.
Thank you. My
Now you were
cowering.
here. Kad Shecha.
Kad Shecha.
Okay.
Bisma.
B. The B separate, and then these two letters.
Simcha.
Yeah.
Simcha. Simcha. Uvsason.
Yep, usason.
Hinchalchenu.
Tanu.
Hinchaltanu.
All right, stop there. Marjorie, will you continue?
Baruch atah Adonai Mimkadesh Yisrael Zehazu Manim.
V'hazmanim, and then will you do the?
Okay.
Can-
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sheha hehyanu v'kiyan yamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to make it a little smaller so we can see all of it, although I know it's challenging for you guys. Okay, and then I'm going to chant it. Savri Maranan Varabanan Varabotai, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei Pri Hagafen, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher bachar banu mikol ha'am, v'romamanu mikol ha'shon, v'kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav, v'atitein lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'ahava. Hold on, I can't. Here we go. Sorry. Moadim l'simcha, hagim uzmanim l'sason. Et yom hagamatzot hazeh zman hirutenu mikra kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta v'yotanu kidashta mikol hamim u'moadei kadshecha b'simcha u'v'sason hinchaltanu. This is not the tune I'm used to, but I'm trying to do the right tune. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. So there's a different tune because it's Pesach, and it's not. We didn't sing that tune, so. But I believe that is the tune. So I'm going to play it for you because she does it so much better than I do. Oops, let me find it.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'am v'romamanu mikol ha'shon v'kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'atiten lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'ahava moadim l'simcha chagim uzmanim l'sason et yom hagamatzot hazeh zman chirutenu mikra kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim ivanu v'charta v'yotanu kidashta mikol hamim u'moadei kodeshecha b'simcha u'b'sason hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim.
Okay. So let me stop sharing. All right. Well, I feel I have prepared you immensely for this holiday. I hope you feel the same way. I have so much more material. I even downloaded the current Rabbinical Assembly. The current Rabbinical Assembly Committee on Law and Standards, how to prepare for Pesach. And it's very interesting. I might attach it to my notes. Oh my goodness, they get into how to clean, if you have an induction stove, how the rules for cleaning that stove are different from other stoves. And I just decided it's enough to make your head explode. And I did not want to spend our time that way. So I did not. At any rate, people spend lots of time analyzing that, and the fact that they felt they had to issue a new document to explain all of that shows you that people take a lot of care. Nevertheless, next Friday we won't have class. I will have a
What a
house.
surprise.
What a surprise. I need a day off. I have a house full of people. I will have been, right, working very hard all week. And I decided we can all sleep in. So I will not see you next Friday. So I will see you the following Friday after this entire holiday is behind us. So enjoy it. I hope everyone has wonderful Seders with family and friends. And just Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you for teaching us so much and sharing your wisdom and your resources and your enthusiasm and your experience as a child and as an adult. I'm very grateful.
Well, thank you all for
Me
coming
too.
in.
Ditto.
You're the excuse that I delved quite so far this year. This is my biggest dive into all things Pesach. So thank you for coming and giving me someone to talk to about it.